Okay, this is a discussion for Unit 21. So, in the past units, we learned that semantics is a study of the meaning of words and sentences, and also with this, the symbols and combination of symbols must have a shared value for the users of a language. Semantics is a study of the rule-governed ways in which languages structures meaning. So, with American Sign Language, the symbols that are used and the way that's structured does have value and it does have meaning for the users of that language. And then determining meaning. So how do we know what a sign means? Whenever you see somebody use, for example, in the book it says the sign cat or house or think, how is it that we get the meaning intended by the signer from the combinations of movements, holds, hand shapes, location, orientation, and the non-manual signals? So basically, determining meaning, it comes from oh my gosh, I just lost it. So they're shared by the members of that community. So, for example, the book says, in American Sign Language, this is name. But in Italian Sign Language, this means room. So it would depend on the community that you're surrounded by, or, how the users of that language use that symbol to give it different meanings. Another thing I found interesting was that the social meaning. So signs and sentences also provide information about the social identity of the language user. So the book uses the example awful, which is awful, and it describes it as this being like a feminine sign. So if you were to go somewhere, you probably would not, or meet a deaf individual who is male, you would probably not see them using this sign for awful because it's visualized as a feminine sign in American Sign Language. And that is because they view the production of the sign as being feminine. So I thought that was pretty cool. So denotation and connotation. I think I understood this a little bit, but the book says the referential meaning of a sign or a sentence is often called denotation, while the social and affective meaning is often called connotation. So the difference between these can be illustrated with the sign deaf. So whenever you do deaf, like this is just like a neutral sign, which makes it connotation. So this is just neutral. And then with denotation, it conveys. So with denotation, it would be like, which conveys the message that the person is full-fledged member of the deaf community. So it's kind of like emphasized to show the denotation. And synonymy. So we describe two signs as being synonymous if they mean the same thing. So when we say two words or signs mean the same thing, it's generally talking about their referential meaning. So in English, the book uses the examples for, sofa and couch, which mean the same thing, or soda or pop. So those may be different depending on the area that you're from or the area that you live in, depending on, how the members of the community use that term. And then in ASL, so the book uses the example deaf again. So in ASL, it would be deaf. So that is just like neutral. So if you're hearing or you're deaf, it's just like deaf. It's just neutral. But, the other sign, it means the same thing, but it's only acceptable for somebody in the deaf community to use it. So profoundly deaf. You know, me walking around someone like this probably wouldn't be acceptable, but my sister's deaf, so if she decided to use that term in her vocabulary, it would be acceptable. But they are synonymous because they mean the same thing.